This webinar is about the California Relief Grant Program with a focus on the Round 2 application, which is starting tomorrow, and with a lot of time for Q&A with Lendistry. So again, my name is Lucy Salcido-Carter, and I'm the Policy Director at CalNonprofits. We are a policy alliance of more than 10,000 members. We advocate for nonprofits for the whole sector with state legislators, administrators, and other elected officials. Our focus is on policy issues that affect nonprofits as a whole, so across the fields. And during COVID-19, we have been advocating consistently for comparable relief for nonprofits, relief programs that are similar or comparable to the ones that small businesses are receiving and other for-profit entities. Our advocacy efforts have helped ensure that nonprofits are included in this grant program, and we've partnered with legislators and other nonprofits and other allies to help ensure that nonprofits are included. And then as an application partner in this program, we are here to help guide you through the application process. We know that the application process can be challenging, and we are advocating to make sure that there are changes that happen as it's possible to make changes, and also to give you the information that you need to be able to apply. We also are engaged in ongoing advocacy. We know that the amount of relief that the program currently has in it, the $475 million, so it sounds like a lot of money, really isn't going to be enough. So we are engaged in ongoing advocacy with the legislature and with state administrators to ask for more money, to ask for more relief funds, and to help make sure that whatever programs come next, that they take into account the nonprofit experience. Let's go to the next slide. Before we get started and before I introduce the other speakers, I just want to make sure that you have access to these resources. And I do want to remind you too that you will be getting a link to the recording of today's webinar and to the slides. So you'll have all that information at your fingertips. If you have questions after today's webinar, you can reach out to Sue Sigler, our amazing program manager on the grant program. And here's her contact information. We'll also put that in the chat for you. If you have tech questions as you're applying for the grant, you'll want to reach out to Lendistry, and we've included their contact information here. They have a phone line that is going to have expanded hours starting tomorrow. You can see those hours. Again, you'll get a copy of all these slides, and we'll put more of that contact information for you in the chat box. We ask that when you are applying for the grant, you can choose CalNonprofits. We'd like to encourage you to do that. By doing that, we'll have the opportunity to work with you and provide nonprofit specific information. And that also shows the California Association the California Office of Small Business Advocate, the power of our network of nonprofits. The California Office of Small Business Advocate is the administrating agency for the program. So let's go to the next slide. And before I introduce the other speakers, I want to make sure that we hear from you all. And I know that you're making comments in the chat and that you're putting your questions in the Q&A. But we'd also like to do a quick poll and just find out from you. Let's call up the question here. So we're just going to take a minute to ask you if you or your organization has been approved for a grant in round 1. So the topic for today is round 2 of the grant program, but we want to know if your organization has been approved for a grant in round 1, which closed on the 13th of January. So you have 5 possible answers to this question, and you can be submitting your answers right now while I'm going over them. The first one is yes. Second one is no. The third one is we are on the waiting list for round 2. The fourth one is we don't know yet. And the fifth one is only unicorns received the grant. So we'll give you just a couple of seconds to complete that poll and find out where everybody is, if they did apply for round one, if only unicorns applied in round one. We'll find that out from you in just a minute, and then we'll report those results. So if you haven't completed the poll now, it'd be great for you just to take a second to click on one of these answers, and we'll see the results in just a minute. Again, did you or your organization get approved for a grant in round one? Okay, I think we'll just round it up now and let's see what our results are. Okay, we have got 7% of people who are on this webinar today said that they have been approved for a grant. So that's some good news. 61% have not yet been approved for a grant. 17% are on the wait list, so automatically eligible for round two. There's 12% of you who don't know yet whether you've been approved for a grant in round one. And then we have 4% who responded that only unicorns received the grant. Well, I would love to know more about why you put that answer, but I know we want to shift focus, so we're going to do that now. And with no further ado, I want to introduce Sue Sigler, who is our amazing program manager at CalNonprofits. She is the lead on this grant program. Sue, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Lucy, and good afternoon, everyone. Allow me to add my welcome. We're delighted that you're here with us. And for just a moment, you've got that slide up in front of you. We heard from Lucy. I'd also like to acknowledge that we have Jan Masaoka, CEO at CalNonprofits, with us today, and it was Jan and Lucy's good work that allowed us all to be able to be here today to apply for this program. And Jan and Lucy are going to be monitoring the Q&A box. I'll reiterate what Lucy said, that we welcome you in the chat box to interact with one another. And if you have questions that you'd like drawn to the presenter's attention to, please enter those in the Q&A box. We're going to get to as many of your questions today as we can. And I want to thank all of those folks who submitted questions in advance as well. I'd also like to welcome Janet Parashinsky from who is the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Lendistry. Lendistry is the company that was chosen by the office, the Cal Office of the Small Business Advocate, to administer this program. And we're delighted that she can make time to be with us today. And Janet is going to be demonstrating for us how to fill out the application. Before we go there, though, I wanted to let everybody know that you saw my contact information up on the screen earlier. And again, you'll get the slides. And if you can't wait for that, I invite you to visit CalNonprofits.org, where my contact information is, excuse me, prominent on the webpage. And I'm happy to communicate with you by email or give me a call about any questions that don't get answered for you today. But we're going to take a good run at answering as many questions as we can. And so I'm going to run over pretty quickly some basic criteria about the grant and also some of the frequently asked questions. And so I wanted to start out with letting folks know that we are today, as Lucy said, discussing the California Relief Grant Program. If you have questions about the Payroll Protection Program or PPP, I want to direct you back to our website at calnonprofits.org, where you'll find a lot of information about that. And I know we had at least one person who was looking for information on how to start a nonprofit. We're not going to be talking about that today, but again, I invite you to visit our website at calnonprofits.org, because there's plenty of information about that topic there. One thing I want to make sure is that to mention is that our webinar today is geared toward nonprofits. There are two types of organizations that are eligible to apply for the Relief Grant Program, either small businesses or nonprofit organizations. And we're going to be discussing nonprofit organizations. If you are a small business owner, I want to invite you to visit careliefgrant.org. I'm sorry, careliefgrant.com. That's also on our website. It'll be on our slides, careliefgrant.com, where you can get connected with a partner who specializes in providing assistance for applications for small businesses. So, and I want to I want to mention to everybody that when you do get to the point of placing an application, you want to make sure if you're a nonprofit that you're on the nonprofit application. Look closely when you go to begin an application. And if you are a small business, likewise, please look for the small business application. For our nonprofit folks, I want to mention that this is not a traditional grant program in the way that nonprofits are used to looking at that. This program is designed to assist organizations who have been impacted by COVID, and there is no narrative in the grant application. There is a basic set of criteria, and if you meet those, then you are deemed eligible for the program. As Lucy mentioned, we could probably have 3 or 4 times this money available in these 2 rounds and still not meet all the need that's out there. So, you may find that you qualified, but you may also find that you're not ultimately selected for a grant because unfortunately there isn't enough money for everybody that would like some. If you applied in round 1 and you got a message that you were waitlisted, you do not need to do anything else. You don't need to apply in round 2. And in fact, you cannot apply in round 2. You do not want to submit 2 applications in one category. An individual may be the applicant for 1 small business application and 1 nonprofit application, but you cannot be the applicant in 2 applications in either one of those categories. So don't go back and recreate your applications. If you were part of round 1, you know that there were some tech issues with the website. And I know Lendistry has been working very hard to upgrade that, to make some of the questions in the application clearer. One of my most frequent questions is, what does document upload pending mean? And believe it or not, that means that you successfully connected your documents. So that I wanted to mention that up front because I get that question often. Another way that this program differs from a traditional grant program is that there are only 3 award amounts. They are based on the size of your organization as determined by your annual income. So if you are $1,000 to $100,000 annually, you are eligible for a $5,000 grant. If you are $100,000 to $1 million, you are eligible for a $15,000 grant. And if you are $1 million to $2.5 million, you are eligible for a $25,000 grant. So the grant amounts are predetermined by the size of your annual budget. And we'll talk about a little bit more as we go along about how that's determined. If you applied in round 1, you were either accepted for a grant, and we saw that from our poll that some people were. Congratulations. You would have heard from Lendistry, perhaps, that you've been accepted, but the way that it works is that as your application is processed, you're asked to upload your banking info. You do not need to upload your banking info during the process of your application initially, although you are certainly welcome to do that. I've gotten folks who are confused about providing banking info as part of the application. Lendistry is not requiring your bank statements or any kind of paper documentation. This is completely an application that you fill out online. And if and when the time comes, you'll be notified and prompted to enter your banking information. So if you were accepted and you were prompted to enter your banking information, then there will be some next steps after that. You'll have to complete a grant agreement, et cetera, before you see that final notification that everything is okay and you can anticipate your grant award. And if you're already at that step, I've gotten asked when are funds to be forthcoming. Lendistry let us know that that's within 45 days of the close of the grant round. So, watch your email and your bank account. If you were denied, if you were deemed ineligible in round 1, you may not apply again in round 2. So we're sorry, not everybody could be accepted, but it is not worth your while to spend the time to apply again in round 2. If you were waitlisted, which is actually what I think is the most common answer for applicants from round 1, that means that you were deemed eligible, but you were not selected yet for a grant. Those folks who are waitlisted are going to be considered again in round 2. You don't need to do anything except wait to hear from Lendistry as to whether they might need more information or as to whether there's a final decision on your grant application. But if you've been waitlisted, you don't need to do anything else. Please note also that these grants are not first come, first served. Everybody who applies in an individual round will be given consideration. So you don't need to try to choke the website on the first day, and getting your application in ahead of anybody else in the round doesn't offer you any advantage. If you have applied in round one and you have not heard anything, please contact Lendistry. I want to reiterate that we at CalNonprofits are an application partner. Think of us as a coach, but we don't have access to the Lendistry system. We can't take a look in there and tell you exactly what's going on, or we can't receive your documents. So please do contact Lendistry either at the helpline number or through email if you have not heard anything. Let's see here. Some of our other frequently asked eligibility questions are, can I still apply if I have received other government assistance like PPP or EIDL or county or municipal government assistance? And the answer is yes, you can. Janet's going to explain to us, however, about expenses, and the headline on that is you cannot pay for the same expense out of two different grant sources. So you need to have unique expenses for this application if you've already received funding from another one. An example would be that if you had payroll in September and you funded that out of the PPP program, you can't pay for that a second time out of this grant program, but you could pay for October payroll. So that's by way of example. This is a grant program, not a loan. The funds do not have to be paid back. And so I'm going to stop there for a moment and ask Christina to bring up our second poll for us. We have more questions to ask of you. And so we asked if you had applied in round one, and now we're asking if your organization is planning to apply in round two. So please check your answer and then hit that submit button. Are you planning to apply in round two? That could be a yes, a no. We applied in round one, but we haven't heard anything. We were put on the waiting list for round two, and we haven't decided yet. We need some more information. So please take a moment to check one of those answers about whether you're planning to apply in round two. And while everybody's doing that, I'm going to give out a couple of tips that will be helpful for folks who are applying. One of those is when you get into the system, you'll be asked to create a password. Please make sure your password starts with a letter and not a number. The Lendistry system is unfriendly to passwords that start with numbers. And the second is, please use a standard email address. The Lendistry system is also unfriendly to email addresses that start with info@ and unfriendly to email addresses that end in no reply or contact.com, et cetera, et cetera. You really do want to have the domain name of either your organization or your email server. So I'll just remind everybody one more time, please choose an answer and hit submit, and then I'll ask Christina to show us the results. And here we go. So we have just not quite half of the people who are here are planning to apply in round two. That's great. You're in the right place. We have a very small number of people who say they are not planning to apply. And I hope that's not because you heard something today that wasn't favorable for you, but maybe you're planning to apply for somebody else or coach them. And we have a fair number of people who applied in round one, but have not heard anything yet. For those folks, we want to make sure that you have monitored your spam folder and your junk mail, that you didn't provide an email that the Lendistry system doesn't like I said a moment ago, that starts with info@ or ends at reply, no reply, etc. We have a fair number of people here who are put on the waiting list for round two. So I hope that you are getting the information that you need. And again, you just need to sit tight and wait to hear from Lendistry. And about a quarter of folks are here to hear that information so they can decide if that's a good use of their time. So super. Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. Okay. And so I'm just going to really quickly go through the basic eligibility requirement, and then we're going to turn it over to Janet to lead us through what an application looks like. So Eligible organizations, you may apply on the nonprofit application if you are a 501c3, 501c6, or 501c19. A fun fact, there are dozens, about 3 dozen different 501c designations. So that's an IRS code. So again, if you're a C3, a C6, or a C19, you are eligible to apply. Other C designations are not eligible to apply. You have to have been in operation on or prior to June 1, 2019. This grant is not intended to fund startups or new organizations. It is intended to fund organizations who are struggling to get through COVID times or struggling to provide additional services demanded by COVID times. All volunteer organizations are eligible to apply. You do not need to have paid staff in order to be able to apply. Contractors do not count as paid staff, and I know we'll touch on that as we look at the application itself. Unfortunately, if you are a fiscally sponsored organization, you are not eligible to apply. Fiscal sponsors may submit one application for their own organization, but cannot submit applications on behalf of their sponsored organizations. And one of my most popular questions is, what about communities of faith and religious institutions? And the answer for that is, it depends. If you are the religious institutions, communities of faith are specifically excluded from the guidelines unless that you are providing some social service, think maybe a school or a daycare center or a food pantry, and at least half of the budget of the organization is devoted to those services that are community benefit as opposed to strictly religious activities. And then one other qualification, that you cannot meet the definition of restricting patronage. Restricting patronage means that simply that you are not open to the general public. So if you are open to the general public, even if you are supported by a religious organization, then you don't meet the definition of restricting patronage. Let's give some examples. If you were an organization that, say, serves people who are afflicted with a particular disease, or if you serve a particular geographic area, those things are not counted as restricted patronage because you would be open to the general public who need those services that you provide. So I'm going to stop there, remind everybody to continue to put your Q&A in the chat. Or put your questions. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Don't put your questions in the chat. Please put your questions in the Q&A, chat with one another in the chat box, and I'm going to turn it over to Janet now. Thank you, Janet.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, CalNonprofits. You guys are doing an extraordinary job. Thank you for all the nonprofit organizations who are on this webinar today. Thank you for all that you do for your communities. So today I'm going to be going over the basics of the application, where to find the application, and specific questions on the application. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. One moment here. My apologies. Go ahead and do this.
While Janet's taking a moment to get her screen up, there was one other thing I wanted to mention. Janet's going to show us the application today. You can go to careliefgrant.com. There is an application guide. There's an opportunity to get assistance in other languages, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the questions we get is there a way to see the whole application in advance before I start it? Because once you start it, you have to complete a screen before you can go on to the next. And so the best way to see the application in advance is to, Janet's got the website up right now, careliefgrant.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Sue, for that. So you're going to go ahead and go to careliefgrant.com. On the homepage, you'll see important dates. You'll also find specific tools, the application guide, one for nonprofits and for-profit businesses. You'll also find the application certification downloads. So for example, this is one of the documents you'll need to upload along with your 990s or your tax exempt form as well. So you'll go ahead and click on the nonprofits. When you apply, you're going to go ahead and go to Find Partner. We do have information here for applicants, application tips, as Sue mentioned. There we have videos on demand as well. So you're going to go ahead and click on Find a Partner. You can do it by county or by language. So if I click here, county, and then I want to find CalNonprofits in Sacramento. So I'm going to click on Sacramento. And then I'm going to go ahead and find my partner that I wish to work with. I'll go ahead and pick CalNonprofits. You can click on Learn More, and you can find out more about CalNonprofits and the resources they have. And then you'd click on Apply Now to apply for the California Relief Grant. So you click on Apply Now. All right. So here on the website, if you already applied through CalNonprofits, you can go ahead and log in with your email and your password that you set up. Your email would be the email that you use to apply with. Your username would be your email. If you already applied in round one and you're on the wait list, however you wanted to upload your documents, you would go ahead and sign into your partner's portal. You should have received an email link when you applied, when you had to reset your password, so you can use that link as well. It's important to note that you write down or remember the partner you applied with, because when you try to go back to log into the portal, it's going to connect to that partner. And typically you can find the name of the partner you applied with on the top left hand on the URL link. You can see it says CalNonprofits. Then you would click here to apply. Please note that it's going to give you two options. The first option is for profits and the second option is nonprofits. It's important that you click on the nonprofits if you're a nonprofit organization. So just keep that in mind. We do have specific information that we're going to need. And so then you would go ahead and click Apply Now. And then we'll be going over that information. So give me a moment. I am going to be using a test link for this to apply, because right now the application is right now closed until tomorrow. So give me one moment and I'll go ahead and set that up for you all. One moment here. If you are on the wait list starting tomorrow, you can go ahead, like I mentioned, log into your partner and you can go ahead and start uploading those missing documentation. So if you're approved, you already have that in the system. So give me one moment and I'll go ahead and get that link ready for us so we can go ahead and do the test application. One moment here. All right. All right, so here we go. So you'd click here to apply. You would click on the nonprofits and click Apply Now. So we're just going to do the first part. The second part would be uploading documents, but we're just going to go over the first part of the application, which is the most important. Please note that as long as you submit an application, you will be considered for round two. Round one applicants who are on the wait list do not need to apply again. So you want to put your first and last name. When we're talking about first and last name, we mean of the individual who was selected on behalf of the nonprofit to apply, that is going to apply on behalf of the nonprofit. So if it's your director, your CFO, or specific admin that your board of your nonprofit chose to apply, you would go ahead and put your first and last name and your specific information, your email address, one that you're going to be using, your cell phone number, your business name would be the nonprofit organization's name, zip code, and you would click on I accept the SMS text policy. This allows us to send you text messages when we are missing documentation. Typically, we're going to be contacting you only if you've been approved and we need specific documentation. And then you would click on that and then you would go ahead and click on continue. This one does not allow you to go ahead and this does not allow you to see the rest of the questions asked. I will have to do a test one here. So this is just going to allow me to go to the next one. One moment here. All right, so you would go ahead and click continue. And then you are going to get more information in regards to yourself, the applicant, the representative of the nonprofit organization. I'm going to go ahead and complete this so you see what the next questions are going to look like. So bear with me here. And we are going to ask the information of the representative of the nonprofit to put in their owner information. This is something that we do require.
Hey, this is Jan butting in. So I just want to make sure, you know, we have a lot of questions about like, what if we didn't hear this, or what if we heard this word of here? So I just want to make sure that we either have time for the end, or maybe we should be sneaking those in here once in a while as you do other stuff. So
of course,
Janet, you guys decide which, just to let you know that though.
Thank you. I was just taking a look at the Q&A myself, and Janet, we're getting a lot of folks who are saying that they haven't heard anything at all back from Lendistry with respect to their round 1 application. Should we be advising those folks to call the helpline?
Yeah, so and just to speak about the application, we can go ahead and answer questions. I think that's what, you know, those attending this webinar want to see. I can definitely speak a little bit more about the application. But in regards to that, if you have not heard back from Lendistry, I recommend one, checking your spam email. And the second is that if you had multiple applications and may have went to another application that you applied with, if you used another email. And the third is you want to go ahead and contact our support center, who will be able to provide you with the status on your application. So yes, please reach Lendistry Support Center for the status of your application, but definitely check your spam folder. Maybe it went there, but you can definitely contact our support center to figure out where your application is at. Just quickly with the application, we did put on here that we had a lot of questions in regards to nonprofits putting 0% because obviously a nonprofit serves the public and there's not an ownership percentage, so 0 is acceptable. So we added on there in the information button as well. So that's something to note that's new on the application. You would click on I accept terms and conditions, and you click on save and agree.
Janet, I want to linger for a moment because that screen that you just had up asked for the applicant's social security number. And that's something that's very unusual for nonprofits to have to provide their personal data. And we do want to acknowledge that the form was originally created for small businesses, and it's great that nonprofits were able to apply, but the form is very different than what we're used to seeing. And so to all those folks who say, why should I have to provide my personal information? The answer is you do. That the applicant does need to provide their social security number, their date of birth, and a copy of their photo government ID in order for the application to be complete.
So that is correct, Sue. We do require that, and we explain that in the application certification. We utilize that to pull an OFAC report, which stands for Office of Foreign Assets Control. So that's one of the reasons why we do have that. Just so you all know, Lendistry is a community development financial institution. We're a mission-based small business lender. And so this is something that we already had in place, and this is something that we are requiring nonprofits to utilize. Per the state, we do have to pull that OFAC report. We do not utilize it for the purpose of checking credit. That's not what we're here to do. We're just here to pull that OFAC report that we're requiring.
And there's more information available on that in our frequently asked questions on our website.
Perfect. We're almost done here. One of the things that we added here is the information button for the business EIN. Obviously, that would be the EIN of the organization. So we'll go ahead and do that. And then let me see here. If you want to go ahead and ask another question while I put in this information so we can continue on to the next portion, that's perfectly fine.
One of the other questions that I'm getting quite frequently are folks who applied in round one, but want to change something that they put on their application. So we want to, I want to highlight that as you're filling out your application, once you get through part one, which means this part that Janet is demonstrating to us right now, is part one. Once you get through there and you hit submit, you cannot go back and change any answers. If you find that you've made an error, you need to send an email to Lendistry, and that email address is careliefgrant@lendistry.com. So if you submitted your application and you want to change something, you can't go back and do it yourself on the website. You need to communicate with Lendistry about that.
That is correct. Once you submit the application, you cannot make any changes. This helps us assess the disclosure questions that you submitted at the very end. So it's important that we do have consistency. And so in order to make those changes, you do have to reach out to the Lendistry support team.
So I'm looking at a question from Pam with respect to lobbying activities. And Pam, we're not going to cover that today, but please feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to talk with you about that. We've got a question. Could we please review the Lendistry helpline hours during this round? The Lendistry helpline will be open until 7 p.m. tonight. We'll reopen again 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, and through February 8th, the hours will be 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to noon on Saturday, closed on Sunday. You do have an option when you call the Lendistry Help Center to get a call back. If you choose that option, please note that Lendistry cannot by law call people back after 8 o'clock. So that's the Lendistry Help Center there. I got a question about, can somebody apply if they are, can someone still apply even if you aren't addressed by the 4 priorities? We haven't gotten to that part yet, but there is a question about some priority target areas, and you do not need to fall under those categories in order to apply. You can still apply. We've also gotten questions about what happened because of the tech problems in round one. A number of people started more than one application. So what do you do if you have filled out more than one application? Lendistry can see that. They know that if you abandon, if you had the same email address and contact information in 2 different applications and one of those was abandoned, they presume that that was a duplicate application and scrub it from the system. However, excuse me, as we mentioned earlier, you don't want to complete applications in there. And if you did that by mistake, you should contact Lendistry. We also have a question about folks who might have started an application in round one, but didn't finish it and are having trouble getting back into that application so that they can finish it for round 2. And Janet, I'd like to double check this with you, that if folks started a round 1 application and now maybe are seeing a message that says user not found, or it's just kind of frozen, they can't get back in there. I believe that folks are supposed to abandon that application and start a whole new one. Is that correct?
That is correct. So one of the reasons why you may not find your application, maybe you had applied to a different partner, but if you cannot find your application, says user not found, I implore you to apply for round 2 tomorrow when the application round does open up. So yes. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about this portion of the application. Something that we did add for the second round is that we were specific to the year. We were asking for the number of full-time employees. So we did add that 2020. So you would full-time employees for 2020, part-time employees, number of jobs created for 2020, and number of jobs retained for 2020. Then we asked for the business demographics, the nonprofit demographics. Who are you serving? We did add business to business, business to consumers, or both. What type of services does your business provide or your nonprofit provide? You can click on service business. And if you click on professional, it gives you a little bit more options like educational services, social services, arts, engineering, accounting, public relations. So you can go ahead and click that. Like I said, professional gives you a little bit more options in regards to any social services you may be offering. You want to go ahead and do the NAICS code. If you click here, takes you to the NAICS code page where you can go ahead and look up the NAICS code for your organization. You want to be able to get a NAICS code. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in here for a moment because nonprofits are generally not familiar with this. And so one of the things I want to mention is that you can click through here to find the code. You'll see a bunch of business categories, and oftentimes they may not relate very well to exactly what your nonprofit does. Just choose your best. Choose what's closest so that you can move through the application. Lendistry understands that nonprofits don't fit into these codes really neatly.
That is correct. Thank you, Sue. So just pick the one that closely matches your organization. Again, Lendistry will be looking at your nonprofit's website or just looking into your nonprofit. So we do that due diligence towards reviewing your application at the very end. Is your organization women-led? This is the question that you can have, yes or no.
Janet, can we stop there for a moment? So when somebody says, are we a women-led business, would we be looking to our board of directors and senior staff? What that mean is the ED, how would we know if our organization is led by women or people with a disability?
So you would look at that as your organization as a whole. So if your organization is primarily women, you can go ahead and look at it in that perspective and put yes or no. And typically we're looking to see if your executive director is a woman.
Okay. And when we say looking at our organization as a whole, we're talking about staff and board as opposed to the people that we serve, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
That would apply also to the other questions as well. When you're looking at ethnicity, this is pertaining to your executive of your organization. And then when we're looking at the rural or veteran race question, you can go ahead and apply that to the people in the community that you are serving. So you can answer those questions in that regard. All right, let me go ahead and do this.
So while we're looking at that, also I know we're going to, as we move through this, after we're done with the drop-down menus and the fields we fill in, we move on to loading documents. And I know Janet's going to show us how to do that. But one of the things that I wanted to mention is that once you get through this part of the application that we're looking at now, part 1, and you hit submit, you have made an on-time submission. It's great if you can go ahead and upload those documents. It'll be so much faster and easier for Lendistry to process. But even if you attach no documents at this time, your application will still be reviewed and Lendistry will contact you for any or all missing documents during the review process.
That is correct. So at this point, I'm finishing this up here. At this point, you would go ahead and click submit. So let me just make sure my email is correct because that's the email I'm gonna be utilizing. So let me see here, perfect. So we are using a testing email, and we use that with Yacht Mail. So I just want to make sure this email is available because I want to show you all what that looks like. So give me one moment here.
And while you're doing that, I'll take a moment to answer another question from the Q&A box, which is that we talked a little bit about what the annual income qualifications were for the grant. And one of the questions that we get often is, what if the organization had some extraordinary income in a given year? So if you had pass-through grants, or you had in-kind donations, or you received a large legacy gift, something like that. Question we get is, can you back that out of your income in 2019, which is the year that Lendistry looks at to determine your eligibility? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no. Lendistry is going to look at what is on your 990 from 2019, from your fiscal year 2019, on line 12 to determine eligibility for the program. If you don't file the long form 990, you can still apply, but they'll be looking for some different documentation. So if you file the 990N, the 990EZ, the postcard, please take a look at our Q&A on our website at calnonprofits.org, because that's addressed there.
All right, everyone. So I finished the application. So I want to just ensure that my email was correct. When you hit continue, I recommend, before hitting that continue, confirming that your email is correct, because at this point you cannot change it because it's already processing your application. It begins processing that application. And so you will receive an email after you click on continue. You receive this to receive your username, which is always going to be your email, and your password. But I recommend you continue completing that application. And so I filled out all my information here, made sure everything is correct. And then at this point, I'm going to hit submit. Once I hit submit, I cannot make any changes. So if you hit submit, you're going to type in yes. That's how you know, once you type in yes and you hit continue, that you submitted your application. At this point, Lendistry will consider your application, even if you do not upload documents for round 2. So as long as you submit your application, you will be considered. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. I did not do this correctly. I do not have a DBA, so I'm going to type in none. It's telling me the spaces, the questions I did not complete. So again, I'm going to hit continue, yes. And then at this point, my application will be processed. It gives you here that you're going to be receiving the email from no reply at my Lendistry with your credentials. And then this is the link that you would utilize to go ahead and log in. So this is the link. It says right here. And then I would go ahead and put in my contact information. So I did receive the email here. And so I would put in my password. And then I just want to show you very quickly, and then we can move on to the questions, more questions. Just so you know what that looks like, I'm going to go ahead and put my credentials in here, the ones I received. I'm going to reset my password. And remember, your password must start with a letter, not a number. Reset my password, and here's my application. And it does say pending document upload. That is okay. That means that your application was completed. It was received by Lendistry. If when you log in, it says incomplete application, that means that you did not complete your application and then you did not type in yes. So remember in the process, at the end, I put continue, I typed in yes, and then I was able to, I got the email saying I need to check my email to get my credentials and log in. And at this point, you would just click on upload documents. You'd click on upload documents, and then you would go ahead and click and upload all the documents that apply to your organization. Once you do that, you do not have to put in your bank information. At this point, instead of hitting save and close, you can go ahead and just log out. If you hit save and close and you didn't complete this bank step, we do not need this. We only require this for applicants who were approved. So you only need to complete the upload document portion of the application, If you hit save and close without completing bank info, it will give you an error. So it's important that once you upload your documents, you go ahead and log out and you're good to go. Your application will be reviewed even if you didn't upload any documents, but because you submitted your application is complete, and Lendistry will go ahead and then review your application and then provide you with the status. If you're approved, put on the wait list. And at that point, if you're approved, Lendistry will contact you to request your documentation. So at this point, Sue, if there's any more questions we can address.
Sure. So one of the things, as you were going through that screen, one of the things that I was remembering from round one is that there may be a time that Lendistry will send you an email that has that box Janet was showing with a $5,000 award and document upload pending. Be sure that you read your emails carefully, because at some point there are samples sent to you in an email, and people have mistaken that for their information. So it's like, wow, I got a sample of a screen that says this is what it looks like, and then folks are going, but wait a minute, I applied for $15,000, so how come this is saying I applied for $5,000? And the answer is because it's a sample and not directly directed toward you. I want to take a couple of minutes for some tech tips, because the Lendistry site can be particular about how it interacts with folks. And so here are some really important tech tips. The first is, please be sure that you are using Chrome as your browser. You are unlikely to be able to get through the application using a different browser. When people try that, it leads to a host of error messages, etc. Once you receive your email, your password email, once you receive that email that says, here's how you can change your password, please be sure that each time you go back to your application, so if you save your work and come back to it later, please be sure that you return through that link in the email password. The system doesn't like it when you keep refreshing a browser, or if you go to it through your browser history or some other way. Go back, keep that email password, and that's how you should return to your application if you want to see it again or check on it again. And if you're having trouble uploading documents, you may want to try clearing your cache, or in that Chrome window, if you look up at the top right, there's 3 dots. You can open an incognito browsing window. The Lendistry system really likes incognito browsing windows and bare caches. So, so that's another tech tip. Let's see here.
Sue, we've got a lot of other questions too. So I know Jan and I are waiting in the wings. So whenever you're ready for us, let us know.
Lucy and Jan, why don't you jump right in there?
Okay. And so here's a question for both of you, Janet and Sue. What if a nonprofit applied using the for-profit application by mistake? What should they do?
Janet, my understanding.
If they applied,
go right ahead.
Go ahead, Sue.
Go for it, Janet.
So if you are a nonprofit organization and you applied as a for-profit, unfortunately, you will have to apply for round 2 with a new application under nonprofit. In our system, we don't have the capability of changing that application type. So it's important that you do apply for round 2 if you accidentally applied for a for-profit business.
Great. Jan, should we tag team? You want to alternate a little?
So a number of people have asked for the purpose of the grant. What are the pull down choices? And give some guidance on which they should choose.
So they want to choose the one that applies to them, and just ensuring that it's not for the use of fund that they use for other funding that they receive, whether it was state, local, city funding. Just make sure it's a different use of funds. So they would just select the one that closely relates to what they want to use the funds for. And then you want to be able to keep receipts for at least 3 years in case there's an audit.
So I want to make sure people understand that, because nonprofits, when we're seeing something like the purpose, we're used to saying something like, helping families that have children with disabilities. That's not what this is. This is just much more technically about how the money is going to be spent. So you shouldn't have trouble with the pull down choices.
Great. Okay. What if you haven't filed a 990 tax return yet? What should you do?
There are a number of reasons that somebody might not have filed a 990 tax return. And in general, that might indicate that you're a newer organization. So we want to make sure that you had operations happening on or prior to June 1, 2019, even if you weren't yet incorporated, or even if you hadn't yet received your tax exemption, you had to have been doing something prior to that date, June 1, 2019. And Lendistry has been very flexible with us in terms of documentation that they're willing to receive. And so if you haven't filed your 2019 990 yet, submit what you do have that can verify your income, and that you fall into that category of between 1,000 a year and 2.5 million a year. Janet, would you want to add anything to that?
Just this is
No, that is correct.
Sorry, let me just jump in for a sec. We have kind of a parallel question that's also, where can people see what the list of documents are that they need to be prepared to upload? So maybe you could kind of jump in with an answer to that one while you're chiming in, Janet.
Yes, of course. So if you don't have the 990, submit what you do have that allows us to verify your income. We do have a specific team that's reviewing nonprofit applications, so they're aware that sometimes there's specific circumstances. And so when they upload the documents, it will give them a list of documents that is outlined right here of what documents that they need, but also on the website. If you go on the website, we do have home button on the application guide. We do have that available as well. So I recommend that you go ahead and download that nonprofit application guide, and it does outline the list of documents that we do need.
Great. So people can start with the guide, get a list of what the different documents are, have those set aside so when they go to the application, they're ready to upload those. Although they don't have to upload them in the initial stage of the application, right?
Correct. We just need your application to be submitted. You type yes, perfect, we have your application. If you are approved, we will reach out to you directly. Someone from Lendistry will give you a call, send you an email, send you a text of the documents that we do need from you. This just helps us move a lot faster through the process if you are approved, but you do not need to upload documents for the second round. If you're just applying, you will be considered with just the application itself, the online application.
Quite a few people, the answers are that you have to contact Lendistry, and quite a few people have had kind of frustrating experiences with that in round one. And so, do you have any like little informal tips? Like, I don't know what those would be like. Call within 5 minutes of the opening time, or noon is a good time, or what? If you call and you wait on hold, is that? And they say something like it's 98 minutes till you're taken. Is that a reliable number, or is that just kind of a little informal, off the cuff tips for people, encouraging, because we know so many people have applied. The system can easily get overwhelmed.
So I think some of the tips that I would say is that when you are reaching out to the customer support team, you can also so I would recommend have your ID, your application ID number available so they can easily locate your application. When you reach out to the customer support team and you schedule a call back, just make sure you answer their phone call. It is an 800 number. And so it's important, maybe you have the unknown number screen on your telephone, so make sure you take that off. So if you get that 800 number coming through, you do answer their phone call. And then just be specific with your questions. You want to make sure that if you're having trouble logging in, I recommend just going back to your emails and seeing that first initial email that says, oh, click here to log in, right, where you reset your password. Just go back there and try to log in that way. But just make sure that you do have your questions ready, and then your application ID number, and then making sure that you do answer that phone call, that 800 phone call.
That's helpful. Thanks very much.
So if somebody has created a password that starts with a number, they need to change it, obviously, because you said a password with a number won't work. What are the steps for doing that?
So, well, it won't let you create a password that starts with a number. So you just have to start, and you keep getting that it does not work, right, when you're creating that password. So just make sure you can have a number, but towards the end. So if you want to create like a word like cookie 123 exclamation point, that would be an example of a password. So just make sure you use letters at the beginning of your password.
Okay, thank you.
I just, we continue to, I'm just going to reiterate this, okay, because we continue to get a lot of questions. If you're a fiscally sponsored project, then you can't apply separately from your fiscal sponsor. Your fiscal sponsor can apply once, but not for each one of their individual projects. So if you're not separately incorporated from your fiscal sponsor, then you can't apply separately. I'm sorry, but that's just the rule here.
And I'm going to jump in and mention that if you received a grant in round 1, you may not apply again in round 2. This is all one program, and you may receive only one award.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lucy, do you have some more things on your list?
Yeah, we have a few questions from all volunteer organizations. And one is just, do you have to have employees at your nonprofit to apply? And the corollary to that is, if you are all volunteer and you are applying, what do you put in the number of employees box?
You put 0, and know that that does not affect your eligibility for the grant. There is no requirement that you have paid staff in order to qualify for the grant.
So all volunteer nonprofits can apply.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm seeing a couple of questions here in the Q&A about the award levels. Please note that there are only 3 award levels. There's 5,000, there's 15,000, or 25,000 based on the size of your organization. So that's how you qualify, is based on your annual income, and the award levels are not reduced upon award unless by your request, but I'm not quite sure why somebody would do that.
We have a couple of questions here, which may be beyond the how-to part of this webinar, but, is there going to be kind of like a later on list of which nonprofits and which small businesses got the funding? And will there be more clarification about the scoring criteria?
So in regards to the list of nonprofits that were selected to receive the funding, that's the decision that the state will have to make to release that information. Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
But I would assume that it's something that the state has to decide.
Thanks.
I think it might be also good to mention that we get a lot of questions about what will the reporting requirements be on this grant. And the answer is we don't know yet. That the advice that Lendistry is providing is to maintain your records for 3 to 7 years, which is typically what nonprofits do, somewhere in that range anyway. So make sure that your records would be available if they were asked for, but there isn't any specific reporting requirements being published right now.
So we've got quite a few questions that I think are very nonprofit specific about multiple people being able to contribute to the application process. For example, if an ED starts an application but then wants to turn it over to their grants administrator or their development officer, is that possible? And if so, how would they do that? This is a very typical thing
So,
for nonprofits to do, by the way.
no problem, no problem. So that is possible. It just depends on where they're at in the application. So for example, if they submitted the first part with the ED's information because he's going to be the representative, he would save and close his application or her application, and he can provide those credentials to that administrator to finish the application with that information.
Okay, so they just use the original information for the first person who started the application and just log in as that first
Correct.
person. Okay, great. Thank you.
Correct. Yes. Correct.
So just to respond to several people are using the pronoun you, like, are you going to pick us kind of thing. And I just want to clarify that we at the California Association of Nonprofits are not making grant decisions. Those are being made by Lendistry and CalOSBA. And we and the other application partners, we don't have a role to play in making the decisions or the rules. We're kind of here as advisors and assistants and helpers to help people apply. So so don't thank us if you get a grant, and don't blame us if you don't. We're hoping we can help you along the way.
I wanted to also take
go
a
ahead.
moment to address addresses that are being entered. Please note that you cannot use a PO box unless you absolutely have no other address available to you. That is addressed in the frequently asked questions on our website at calnonprofits.org. And yes, many people are working from home, and a home address for the applicant will be acceptable as well. Lucy?
I am searching for more questions, and I'm aware of the time that it's 3:09. So
yeah. We have a lot of repetitive questions, so hopefully people heard the answer a little bit earlier. So yeah, most of them are kind of repeats, or they're really specific to an individual person.
And I want to mention that there are a lot of specific situations because we are nonprofits and we come from a lot of different places. And so once again, my contact information is on the website. You can reach me at 415-535-0738, and you'll get that on the slides as well, or by email, sues@calnonprofits.org. And I'm happy to talk with you about your individual situation if you didn't get your answer today, and if it's not included in our FAQs on the website.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we can move on to the next slide, one of the CalNonprofit slide, and we've got more of that information on these slides. I want to give a big thank you to Janet and Sue for all of their helpful information today. Really, being able to look at the application form is just such a helpful thing, and we got to a lot of questions today. So thank you so much, and to Jan for monitoring the Q&A. I also want to thank our tech team today, Christine Metropolis and Christina Dragonetti, and also our closed captioner. So here you'll see the list of some of the resources that we have available for you. We gave this to you earlier, but just want to draw your attention to it again. We will also include it in the email that you are going to get by the end of the day tomorrow. You will get this contact information for Lendistry, the email address and the phone number. If you have tech questions for Lendistry, you haven't gotten anything back and you've completed your application, contact them. Again, Sue's information is right there for you, and you will get a link to the recording and to these slides. So you'll have all this information at your fingertips in the email. We can go to the next slide. I also want to encourage you to apply or to join CalNonprofits. You don't have to be a member of CalNonprofits to use our URL to apply for one of these grants, but there are a lot of amazing reasons why you should join CalNonprofits, and they're on this slide here. So with that, I think we are done. I want to